really, just sort of how big guys do it. This is something that I think requires serious discussions. I don't expect we're going to have a particularly serious discussion during a presidential election. But if the president is reelected, I have no doubt that these issues will come up. And if he's not reelected, we have to have a national conversation about how this sort of thing can happen.
Did your stomach churn when you saw the president attempt to replace the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York?
Well, I wondered, and I don't have any direct knowledge because I've been out of the government, but I wondered what the reason for it was. I have to say relations with the Southern District of New York at Justice have historically been difficult. As an alumnus of Main Justice in the Reagan administration, we used to call it the Sovereign District of New York. So there are probably things there that I'm not familiar with. But what bothered me was what the president said to President Erdogan of Turkey at one point in a meeting in Buenos Aires, when he said basically, look, these guys in New York are Obama guys. I'm going to get my guys in there and everything will be fine. When I knew full well at the time the prosecutors were career prosecutors. Look, if Hawk Bank had done what it did in violating our Iran sanctions and then falsifying its financial records about it, they had been an American bank, we'd have toasted them. And they would have deserved to be toasted. So it wasn't a question about treating a foreign company unfairly. It was a question of letting a foreign company get away with a lot more than we would have let an American company get away with.
What is your summary for the American public about the Ukraine aid tied to political investigations matter? Summarize it for the American public in a way that you didn't during the impeachment process.
Well, I didn't because of the way the Democrats mishandled impeachment. I call it in the book impeachment malpractice. Happy to get into that in a minute. But what was basically going on here was that for his own personal political benefit, the president was torquing around a legitimate governmental interest of the United States. Legislation that provided for security assistance for Ukraine had the broadest possible bipartisan support. It had the support, I believe, of every senior administration advisor in the national security space. And the only one who was really opposed to it or had questions about it was Donald Trump, because he wanted investigations of his 2016 opponent, Hillary Clinton, and his likely 2020 opponent, Joe Biden. I just thought that was illegitimate. Our focus, because we were up against a September 30 fiscal year deadline, was to get the security assistance released. It turned out it was released the day after I resigned. But this was the kind of thing being pursued through channels independent of the government, outside the government. Something that really was very disturbing and which, to this day, I still don't know the full details of.
And when you said it was Rudy Giuliani's drug deal, what did you mean?
Well, I had been pulled into a number of conversations, and I recount this in the book, with Rudy on the phone or from the president telling me about his efforts in Ukraine. At one point, the president asked me to call President Zelensky and arrange a meeting for Giuliani, which fortunately turned out I didn't have to do for a variety of reasons. But the president is free as president to pursue his own political prospects. He is a politician. He has a First Amendment right to do it. What he doesn't have a First Amendment right to do is torque the government to his political benefit. And that's what I think we saw there.
When you look at those who were your colleagues who did testify, do you feel any remorse or regret that you did not join them? And do you think that their motives were any more pure than yours?
No, I think their motives were pure. I would just point out they all received subpoenas from the House. I did not.
But they also informed the House that they would comply, and you did not.
Well, what I said when my deputy, Charlie Kupperman, got a subpoena, he also got a letter from the White House counsel ordering him not to testify. The others did not get such a letter. They got letters basically saying, don't cooperate. And what Charlie Kupperman did, what his sin was, faced with an order from the legislative branch, faced from a contradictory order from the executive branch, he asked the courts to resolve it. What did the House do? They withdrew the subpoena to moot the court case. And then they decided they were in a rush. They were in a rush to move ahead. Why? Because they didn't want to affect the Democratic presidential nomination process. Now, I understand their political motivation, but that's torquing another governmental interest, the impeachment process, around a political interest for them as well. I think
which is worse.
Well, I'm not sure which is worse, to be honest about it. I mean, I think that we know how to conduct a bipartisan impeachment inquiry in this country. It happened in Watergate. Sam Ervin, a Democrat, worked with Howard Baker, a Republican. They developed a record. You know, it turned out the first senator to call on Richard Nixon to resign was Jim Buckley, not even a Republican, the Conservative Party senator from New York. That's why Nixon had to leave, because the Republicans said we can't defend him anymore. The Democrats in the Trump case pushed the Republicans in the House away. They made it a partisan process. I think whatever I would have said would have been lost in the shuffle. I don't think it would have had an effect.
And you have no regrets for not doing that?
Look, I have regrets about the whole way the process turned out. I have a big regret, that the White House argument, which conceded the quid pro quo, conceded the famous phrase about what Trump did, and said even if it were all true, it did not represent conduct that rose to the level of an impeachable offense, which was an argument, I think it's fair to say, a majority, maybe nearly all of the Republicans in the Senate accepted.
Do you accept it?
No, I don't. I've said if I were in the Senate, I think I probably would have voted in favor of impeachment on the article about Ukraine.